Evade was one of the biggest breakout games of 2022. Building off the success of other Nextbot games, it quickly took over Roblox by storm, going from just a couple thousand to averaging over 100k at a time, firmly placing itself at the top 10 of Roblox games, especially at the last half of 2022. Since then, the game has been dropping consistent updates for their fans to enjoy, and today it still maintains itself at a solid 30,000 to 50,000 players. But this is the story of how Evade came to be, the many updates that took place, and what is the future going to hold for Evade. Evade started development at the 10th of June 2022. It's created by Hexagon Development, which previously worked on Tower Blitz and gave them a start. Of course, Nextbots and Tower Defense are completely different genres, but it's a given that if you have made a game already, it's easier to make another game than to completely start from scratch. And Tower Blitz isn't a small game, not at all. Even before Evade, it had millions of visits, and it's considered to be one of the premier games in Roblox Tower Defense. The developers of Evade, unlike a lot of Nextbot games at the time, had some experience. Beef Choplets, one of the main developers for Evade, had worked at Tower Defense Simulator, which is considered today to be the best tower defense game on Roblox ever. So going into it, they had a skill set that they could work with. Evade was created to take advantage of the Nextbots trend, simple as that. Nextbots were blowing up in other games, and it was only a matter of time before Nextbot games start appearing in Roblox. So the developers knew they had to jump on it quick. But in fact, Evade was late to the party, even though it started very early. Nico's Nextbots was already extracting mainstream attention at late July, even though it started development a month after Evade. Evade finally went into beta at July 22nd, 2022, and this was where a lot of the staple features were added to the game. Special rounds, voting, and many of the earliest maps like Seraph Research were added during this beta phase. I actually played in a beta a long time ago. It was a really fun time, to be honest. Anyways, Evade was eventually released on the 5th of August 2022, and it started picking up steam right out the gate. This is how Evade looked like in its first iteration, which was taken a few days after release. It's weird to see Evade at only 1,000 players, considering it has never fallen below that since its release. But after a few weeks, this is when stuff gets real. In between 18th of August to 24th of August, the game went from 6,000 players to a whopping 196,000 players during its peak, when the game wasn't even a month old. This was the first time both of the developers had made a game this big before. They had experience with some popular games. Tower Blitz and Tower Defense Simulator are games that are successful in their own right, but this was the first time in the Roblox mainstream, in front of everybody. And of course, they made the wise decision to double down on the hype. The IKEA update was released during the 20th of August and featured casual mode, the decoy, Hermes shoes, the military grade pack, some of the staple items that innovate today. The skins update dropped during September 5th, just 2 weeks later, and featured iconic maps like IKEA and Mansion. And both of these updates were not filler. There were a ton of features like the FOV slider and Great Munsai, and many other things that Evade players take for granted today. I also made a video about it a while back. With all these updates, Evade had quite a lot of content for the players to chew on. And looking back, it was a good idea for the developers to strike while the iron is hot. Evade never broke 200,000 players though, and it was the closest to doing so in August 29th, 2022. It was just 3,000 players behind. But of course, by late September, Evade was cooling down. Nextbots hype at this point had started to reach its end. Games like Nico's Nextbots have already started to drop in players, and while Evade was still doing insane numbers, it was clear that it wasn't sustainable. The developers at this point decided to change their strategy and work towards the new Halloween update. And this update was pretty ambitious, as they had their sights on new Halloween themed maps, cosmetics, and even a new battle pass system. At this point, Evade had never received an update of this magnitude. With a project of this size, it was clear that updating once every 2 weeks or so isn't going to be sustainable. The biggest worry for a project like this is going to be bloat. When an update gets huge, it may be difficult to meet deadlines. For smaller updates, it's easier to manage because there's less work, but for an update as big as Evade's Halloween, with 60 over cosmetics, tons of maps, and stuff like that, it might fall into a bottleneck issue that might kill progress. But thankfully, it came just in time. At 23rd of October 2022, the Halloween update was released. But of course, it went through quite a number of issues. Bugs that didn't appear in testing popped up, the game was delayed for an hour, and the people didn't like the implementation of the battle pass system. This was mainly because in order to prevent people from speed running the whole thing, the developers had set a timer on the later stages of the battle pass to make sure people don't complete the entire thing in 2 days. But the timer was too long for people, so it was eventually reduced to just 12 hours. But still, it was a massive success. At this point, the game had been falling away from 100,000 players, but the Halloween event was able to allow Evade to reach the heights it did in the earlier months. Also, having community members post their own creations was a great idea, because some of the Halloween maps released for this update were the best that the game has ever received. Overall, it was a successful event, but eventually it was going to hit this milestone. Evade hit 1 billion players at the 10th of November 2022, which was just 3 months after release. A new 1 billion visits update was also released for the game, but hitting this milestone was honestly huge. There is only 75 games in Roblox today that have hit this milestone ever, and it was the 3rd fastest game to do so, right behind Doors and Piggy. The update itself wasn't anything too special. I think they were busy for other things at the time. The only noteworthy things were the one map that was featured in this update, work facility, and the redesign of the equipment menu, stuff that I presume was probably saved for the Halloween update. But things started to go downhill from here. Evade was no longer reaching 100,000 players anymore, not even during peak hours. 29,000 for Evade was unheard of back in September, but by November it was starting to become the norm. There were quite a lot of rumors at the time saying that Evade as a game is dying, and I get their point. Half of their fan base by October had already disappeared, and the game was shrinking every day. There was this new Halloween update that was planned for, but that was going through a lot of delays. People have said that Evade is dying since its creation, but back then it was mostly just memes. Now it's getting serious. A lot of the YouTubers that were active during the earlier parts of Evade, like Megalodon, JMT, these YouTubers were simply not uploading Evade anymore because they've simply moved on to other things. The only YouTuber that was still uploading daily content for Evade was KB, and I respect his grind, man. His channel is going crazy now. The only thing to look forward for was the new Christmas event that would return Evade to its former glory. In 31st of December 2022, the Christmas event was released, and it ran into a lot of the problems that the original Halloween event had. A delayed release, not receiving awards, next spots not spawning. At release day, it simply wasn't a good state. And unlike the Halloween event, this Christmas event had a more mixed reception. This was probably due to the Christmas event being almost the same as the Halloween event, and some even saw the Christmas event as a regression in some regards. Firstly, there were no special rounds added for Christmas, no other settings being added to Evade, and the maps given at Christmas were seen as weaker compared to the ones we saw at Halloween. And it didn't really cause the same splash that the Halloween event had. The Christmas event was able to take Evade to 60,000 maximum players, which was half of what the Halloween event did at 120,000 players. At this point, a lot of the Evade is dying rumors were starting to become true, and there was certainly more talk of it after the Christmas event. There were 2 noteworthy releases in 2023, the Valentine's Day event and the St. Patrick's Day event. Both of these events were small compared to what the game got back in its early days. Maybe 1 or 2 maps, a military set, but nothing too crazy. It did bump up the player numbers to 50,000 to 60,000 players, but it quickly went back down to its 20,000 30,000 range. Nowadays, that is where Evade sits at, and it's no longer at the top 10 most popular Roblox games anymore. But honestly, I'm not putting that on the fault of the developers, because it makes perfect sense. Evade has reached its maturity phase. It has enough features, maps, and content to satisfy its current player base. They're no longer pumping updates into it because Evade simply doesn't need it anymore. It has enough features already, and sitting at 20,000 to 30,000 players is still a very huge achievement. It's rubbing shoulders with games like Combat Warriors and The Hood, both considered to be massively popular Roblox games. And Evade's player base is pretty much solidified at this point. For the past 3 months, it has stayed roughly at the same player count and is not fluctuating at all. So you know that these players are going to be loyal to Evade, at least for a very long time. And the fact that it's still sitting at 30,000 players while other Nextbot games have completely fallen off the map is honestly a testament to how good it is compared to anything else in this genre. As much as some people wouldn't like to say, I think Evade is here to stay. It will probably never reach the heights that it got during its blow up phase, but in its current state, it's going along just fine, and I think it would do well for the years to come. Thank you for watching this video, and if you want to see another video, check out the video where I ranked all 50 maps for Evade. And yeah, I'll see you there.